they fear DeSantis. They don't fear Trump. In the same way that we would love for Kamala Harris to be the nominee, Democrats would love for Trump to be the nominee. Now, they thought that in 2016 and they lost. So it doesn't mean Trump can't win. It just means I want to take you into the mindset of how they are breaking this down in their own sort of ideas, if that makes sense. And this is going to be a debate that we're going to be having, Buck, for like a year and a half now.
The reason why I think DeSantis is so strong is because he can do both things. He can do the performance art that seems to have you so exercised to the base, most of which I don't really know if it's that damaging. He picks a fight with Disney. Does it really affect anybody? I mean, I read the Don't Say Gay, which is not the name of the law. They called it the Don't Say Gay law. It could have been called the Let's Do Things in Schools the Way We Did 5 years ago law. It really could have. So what I'm saying is he can do both that, but he knows how to rile up the base. I agree. He's a politician. But he also can be a normal governor. In other words, after the storm, he can stand with President Biden like a normal governor does and work with him, and then send some migrants to Martha's Vineyard. And that's a very powerful thing to have both those elements.
So I think there's some insight there from Bill Maher, who is a lib. So I always say this. He's just because he says it doesn't make it true. He actually can be pretty funny sometimes and insightful sometimes. And you talk to him about climate change, for example, and you're just like, how are you so delusional? But on other things, he can be a sound enough or rational enough mind. And on this one, I think that this is where we get back, Clay, to the discussion over candidate quality and what an archetype maybe is going forward if the GOP is going to win some of these very tight races and no one should look at what happened in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada. Michigan wasn't even close, as you pointed out, but no one should look at those states and say, oh, we'll just do better next time. No, we're not just going to do better next time, right? I mean, we actually have to have a plan. The messaging is a part of it. I think the machinery, the voting machinery component is a big part of it. But, Clay, what he's getting at here is we got to have candidates, you got to be, I think what he's talking about when he says performance ability, be MAGA or be somebody who believes in the mission, throws punches metaphorically at the media, stands their ground, but also fixes things when they break. Right? Fixes the bridge when the bridge is washed away by a big storm. Make sure that the lights are turned on. Make sure that the state budget is, the results and messaging component of this, certainly for any incumbents, is, I think, absolutely essential. And as anybody looking to ascend to higher office in the GOP, I think they've got to bring that to bear as well.
Here's the way I would analyze it. Who do you think the Democrats want to be the nominee in 2024? The answer is they want Donald Trump to be the nominee. They would desperately prefer that Trump is the Republican nominee in 2024. Doesn't mean that they're right necessarily in thinking that they can beat him, but that's the reason they want him. They're terrified of DeSantis.
I would love to hear, do our people, do you disagree with that notion that the Democrats think that this is not saying that Trump would lose. This is saying, do you think that Democrats believe that Trump is their best matchup? To be very specific, I want people to say, oh, Trump will kick their butts. That's not the point you're making. You're saying Democrats believe they can beat Trump. I'm just wondering if anyone's got calls on that, let us know.
Yeah, look, I don't think that you should always make your decision based on what your opponent wants, but I do think if you are a rational, reasonable person, if Democrats are all sitting around thinking to themselves, hey, we would love for Donald Trump to be the nominee, then I think Republicans have to contemplate that. Now, let's pretend that Buck and I had a magic wand and we could wave it and we could select who the Democrat nominee would be. Who would we pick? Kamala Harris. I think probably, Buck, would you agree with that? If you could wave a magic wand right now and pick any prominent Democrat. You can't just pick some random guy, right? Or girl,
I would love to. Beto for president would be like
Beto
so
would
amazing.
be great, but
I would love
but
it.
Someone,
Clay, he was born for it.
But someone who could actually get it, I would love it if Biden stepped down and Democrats said, hey, Kamala Harris is our choice. My point on that is the reason why I'm saying it's not because I think Kamala is a great candidate. It's because I think that she would get crushed, okay? That's what Democrats think about Trump right now. Certainly it's what Joe Biden thinks. They're terrified of Ron DeSantis. Now, the Trump people would say that Ron DeSantis has a glass jaw, that he hasn't been tested on the national stage, that what worked in Florida will not work in Arizona or Pennsylvania or Georgia or any of the places, Nevada, that this election will be decided in 2024. That's their argument. But I will tell you that Democrats are far more troubled and afraid of DeSantis than they are of Trump. Doesn't mean, I would put it this way, Buck. If you'd go draft in the NFL draft, you have a ceiling and a floor. Trump is not going to win a landslide in 2024, okay? You can grab this. I would love to be wrong. I'd love for Trump to win, and by 9 o'clock Eastern, the whole election's decided. It's not remotely close. I think it will be a lot like this one, and a lot like it was in 2020, and a lot like it was in 2016, where we're all waiting late at night to see how the ballots are going to come in. I think that's likely what would happen. DeSantis, I think, could win a landslide. I think Ron DeSantis, comparatively, this thing could be done by like 10 o'clock Eastern on election night 2024. Now, the Trump people would say, well, he's got a glass jaw. Maybe he loses big. I don't think that Trump would lose big because I think, frankly, there's enough of a base now that it's almost impossible to lose big for the Republican voters. 45% of the electorate's going to come out regardless. But do you see my analysis there that they fear DeSantis? They don't fear Trump. In the same way that we would love for Kamala Harris to be the nominee, Democrats would love for Trump to be the nominee. Now, they thought that in 2016 and they lost. So it doesn't mean Trump can't win. It just means I want to take you into the mindset of how they are breaking this down in their own sort of ideas, if that makes sense. And this is going to be a debate that we're going to be having, Buck, for like a year and a half now.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be ongoing because we're still going to be effectively in the political minority, right? I mean, we're going to, meaning, you know, we're not going to be able to get legislation passed. We're not going to be able to have agenda items. Now, at the state level, though, you can, which is why, again, the genius of the founders comes back to us once more, where you have, okay, we don't have control of the federal government, but you're going to see in Texas and Tennessee, in Florida, maybe in some other red states of note, you'll see decisions being made and policies being pursued that will show results that will hopefully be not just talking points for the rest of us, but also maybe a symbol of what could be done, what could be accomplished at the national level starting in 2024. But we have to, I guess, one of my biggest problems for the 4 years when Trump was president was that there was very little willingness to discuss how do we coach the team that we've got to make things better. It was always shut up, everything is exactly the way it needs to be. Don't there's criticizing because you love somebody and you want them to be better, and there's criticizing because you're trying to tear them down. Criticism meant to help the Make America Great Again agenda was generally shouted down. People didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to hear it at all. Okay, well, Joe Biden became president in 2020, and now we just had an election where we didn't win back the Senate. I think we just need to be honest about, as a party, the GOP, this isn't about any one candidate or anything else. What's really going on here? What is really happening? And emotional safe spaces, we got to leave that for the other side. We have to be willing to break down exactly based on the data, the truth. And there are going to be arguments about this. We're like a big family here. There's going to be arguments over what's happening and what's right and what's going to be the best way forward.
Thanksgiving is next week, right? I think a lot of people out there are going to be sitting around arguing about Trump DeSantis. I think there's going to be a lot of generational discussions here. And this is what they were talking about Friday on MSNBC. This is Stuart Stevens talking about DeSantis versus Trump. They're already debating it in earnest, even on the left side of this country. Listen.
Say you're in the DeSantis camp and you're trying to decide if you're going to run for president. In a normal political world, you beat each other up in the primary, and then when the race ends, the war ends.
Yep.
That won't happen with Donald Trump.
Nope.
If DeSantis runs against Donald Trump and manages to win, Donald Trump will spend the rest of his life trying to kill Ron DeSantis. He could care less who was president of the United States. And he can stop a Republican nominee from winning.
Yes.
I mean, you could put an independent candidate on the ballot in a couple of states, and it's over. So if you're on DeSantis, is this really worth it? I mean, say if Trump, one of two things would happen if Trump ran. He would win or he would lose. If he wins, he's only going to serve 4 years. So I would really think long and hard if I was advising a candidate about taking on Donald Trump, because I think ultimately he's probably going to win. And if he doesn't win, he's going to stop you from winning.
That's the nuclear option, I would say. And I think a lot of people are already talking about this. If DeSantis beats Trump in the primary, let's say it happens, would Trump basically say, screw this, I'm running as an independent, and hand the 2024 election to whichever Democrat were the nominee? I don't think he would. I would hope that he would not. But I think that's in the back of a lot of people's minds as they talk about the idea of Trump versus DeSantis. How does this play out? How does it end? Some people say, look, DeSantis can be governor until 2026, regardless of who wins in 2024, although it could change if Biden's the nominee or not. But likely there's no incumbent in 28. Trump wins. He's only got 4 years. And then you run in 28. I just think for DeSantis, the time is now. I do, because I think in a couple of years things can change. The party winds can blow in different directions. But simultaneously, I understand why Trump wants to run, and that's why I think this is going to be an 800-pound gorilla knockdown, drag-out battle.
It will be a Donnybrook in reference to the Irish fair from the 12 that began in the 1200s, as we learned.
See, how glad are you that you do this show with me? You'd probably never used the word Donnybrook before. Now you know its etymology and everything.
I had never even heard the word before.
Really?
To be honest with you. Yeah, I'd never even heard it before. So, I mean, I love learning. I have an app on my phone that just cycles through new words that I could learn every day. Like, I get excited about this. This is why my social life.
If it's used
thank
all
God
the time
I'm getting
in
married.
sports.
My social life is very limited.